Democrats for 5 minutes. I mean, let's really, you started out by blaming Republicans. The whole segment has been about blaming Republicans for the failure of immigration reform. What I'm telling you is that there's Republicans of goodwill here in the House of Representatives, like myself, that understand the need for a comprehensive immigration approach to immigration reform, that we understand that we need to do something with the 11 million people that are here. We understand that we have a broken immigration system. We understand that we need to do something for a high-skilled sector. That we're bleeding right now jobs. We're having people come and be educated in the United States, and they're leaving the United States. We understand all those things, but we want to make sure that the triggers are in place, that we don't repeat the mistake of 1986, where we have amnesty today and a promise of enforcement in the future. That's all we're asking for, and I don't think that's too much to ask for.
And I would, of course, note that the mistake that you mentioned is of a Republican president, Ronald Reagan, who is much more in the mainstream on this issue than your party is currently. But this all could be solved very simply. Why not just bring the Senate bill up for a vote in the House?
We can
and let the members of the House decide.
We can bring it up in the House Judiciary Committee, and it will die immediately. I think that's a great idea.
The committee isn't the House. He means the full House.
You know, we work through the House committee process here. I know you guys don't like that, but that's what we do here in the House of Representatives.
Can I ask you, Congressman, have you had any communication with Republicans in the Senate about this?
Absolutely. I have talked to a lot of Republicans in the Senate. I'm good friends with members of the Group of 8 in the Senate. I'm also friends with people who voted against the immigration reform bill. And we're trying to craft legislation and craft a concept and a way for us to get to an immigration reform bill. I think we both want the same thing.
Have you spoken with John McCain or Lindsey Graham about this and about the fact that, as you said, there is no chance of passage of the Senate bill in the House?
I've not talked to them about that, but I've talked to other people in the Senate.
I want to bring Bob Herbert in here. Bob, you know, this is, I think, a really dramatic turn of events, and I will say, as someone that was hoping for a broader, comprehensive immigration reform bill, I think a sad day for a lot of Americans who were excited about the prospects of that bill. At the same time, looking at the sort of political calculus here, it seems as if the Republican Party does not think it needs to take the advice of the RNC and pass comprehensive immigration reform and maybe make a greater bid to people of Hispanic origin, Latin origin, people of color. And the New Republic actually sort of analyzes this notion of perhaps doubling down on white voters by saying if Republicans don't want to compromise on immigration reform, they will probably need to do something else to make up ground. It could be moderating on social issues or economics or a little bit of both. Either way, the GOP will have to pick its poison, meaning the status quo is not going to work for the party.
See, I think we make a mistake when we look at the Republican Party through a lens of moderation and logic, which is what we tend to do in these discussions. That is not where that party is now. That is not what that party is. I thought the excitement over immigration reform was misplaced because I never thought immigration reform was going to pass the House. I knew inevitably and said, I think maybe probably on the show, but I said inevitably we were going to get to this point. I think the Republican Party is hostile to immigration reform, and I think that it is hostile to most voters. The party, not all Republicans, but the party as a whole, is hostile to non-white voters, and that's where the party is. The argument that we've been making is that this is a losing stand for the party, that the demographics alone are changing in such a way that they can't continue the way they are. I completely agree with that, but I don't think the party, I think the party itself has to change. And that means that the folks who are in the party right now have to be gone. So we have to wait for that.
Congressman, I want to ask you specifically about that, because you're a person of color. Your mother was a single mother. You came to this country from Puerto Rico. Are you satisfied with the outreach and the messaging your party has done to single women, to working women, to single mothers, to people of color, to people looking to come to the United States and make a better life for themselves?
You know, I think we can do a much better job, and I actually agree with that statement. But the rest of the statement, I think it's a little bit off. I'll give you just one example. Steve Pierce is a congressman from New Mexico. There was a New York Times article written about him, how he is a very conservative. He's just as conservative as I am on many issues. He represents a district that is mostly Hispanic, and what he does is he reaches out to the Hispanic community. He doesn't pander to the Hispanic community, but he makes sure that he goes to all the meetings, he goes to all their causes, he does everything they do, and what he gets is the respect of the Hispanic community. I think we can be much better, and I think Steve Pearce has to be an example for every Republican. But pandering to the Hispanic community like the New Republic and MSNBC wants us to do, that is actually a recipe for disaster. I would beg to differ
on that last point.
That's a recipe for disaster. Because what's going to happen is, if you're pandering, it's going to be the side that panders the most that's going to get the results. We're never going to out-pander the Democratic Party.
I don't think what we're suggesting is pandering. What we're suggesting is a set of policy goals that help people make a better life in this country.
And that's what we want.
Which you want to qualify or characterize as pandering, but that's not what we do here.
But that's exactly what we want. That's exactly what you're doing, is you're saying that the only way the Republican Party can win is by accepting an immigration reform bill that is not fully completed. I don't think that's the right way to do it. We do the right policy, and the politics will follow. But I do agree that we have to, as a party, go out to the communities and talk to them, explain to them why our policies are different than their policies. Ask them why they think that under the Obama administration there's more Hispanic people that are poor, there's more African Americans that are poor, there's more people losing their jobs, their businesses. Those are things that we can talk about.
Given all that, it is a wonder that the president won the Hispanic community by the margins that he did. But I do want to ask you, Congressman, because
it is a wonder.
Given the fact that you did not vote, you were one of the very few number of Republicans who did not vote to keep Speaker Boehner in as a Speaker of the House. Are you satisfied with his leadership on this issue in particular, and are you confident that he will stand the House Republican caucus in good stead?
Absolutely. He and I have a very good relationship. We've had many conversations after that vote. He understands why I voted the way I voted, or actually failed to vote. I abstained from voting. And I think he's leading the Republican conference in the right way. He's making sure that the will of the Republican conference is heard. That's why we're having the conference that we're having today. And you're going to have people like me that are going to be advocating for getting something done, for showing the American people what our vision of immigration reform, because I think it's a mistake for us to have no vision on immigration, to say that our solution is to do absolutely nothing. I actually think that's a mistake, and I think that's when we would lose politically. But if we can say, these are the things that we're willing to do, you will see that the American people will actually be on our side.
Well, Congressman, we look forward to that action, and we look forward to having you back on the show to discuss those actions specifically. Thank you so much for your time and for coming on the program, Congressman.
Great to be